Good day to you, lovely people. How are you this wondrous day? Welcome to the other news you're never going to hear on TV, because why? They just don't want you to know that all this stuff is happening around you. They'd rather you be mad and violent at your neighbor and spouting profanities at the people all around you and throwing Molotov cocktails in stores and screaming at people like Karens. Folks, where do we live? Is this the Twilight Zone? My goodness. It just seems to get crazier and crazier by the day. Well, thanks for joining me here and listening to this crazy news. I guess you guys have listened to my first newscast of the day, and I talked about the cyber attack hitting the JBS meatpacking processor plants. That happened throughout Australia and in Canada as well. So the green crazy Luciferian Satanists out there are really trying to get people to not be able to get access to beef or meat in that general, and they're going to push their bugs and fake impossible burgers on you. They're going to push their quote-unquote plant-based meat-flavored diet on you all, and even the Soylent Green starring Charlton Heston. Who knows, you could be drinking him as well someday. Folks, I don't know where all this craziness decided to pop up, but somebody pushed the button and said, let the crazy begin. And so now we've got to deal with this. And how do we deal with this craziness? We get knowledge and we pray to the Lord and ask Him for guidance, and we wait for Him to answer us. Then we get us some wisdom. And above all, deepen your faith in the Son of God and our Father in heaven and the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. They have our best interests in their heart and mind always. And folks, we have to align ourselves with them, with the Almighty, so that we can be on the right page, doing the right things at the right time, because God is directing our actions. Folks, please don't let all of this bad news get you down. It can be very depressing, I get that. But don't let it take control of you. There is great hope in loving the Lord and discovering that relationship with Him and learning how to work with God. Your life can be so magical and spontaneous and adventurous if you just take Lord Yahweh's hands and Lord Yeshua. Let them show you how to live a better life, folks. Okay. Going on with the news. I'm going to take a moment and talk about Thomas Tyler from 1787. If this doesn't say anything about all the nations of the earth and all the governments of the earth, I don't know what is. So he states from 1787, a democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progress through the following sequence: from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to selfishness, from selfishness to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, from dependence back into bondage. This man understood back in 1787 how governments and the people standing behind those governments actually all fall apart in the end. And it's a vicious cycle. This is why the saying goes that history repeats itself. And if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it over and over. So where do you think we are in this list? I can pretty much say that we're beyond selfish and complacent at this point. I would say that we're anywhere between complacency to apathy and then dependence, because we are seeing more and more people now who are living off of the government instead of going out and getting jobs and being true Americans and, pulling themselves up by the bootstraps and getting out there and inventing things and doing stuff that Americans were so good at. There's been so much evil being taught to our children and all of the young people of this age. They've just totally been brainwashed about how great this country really is. They just have no clue. They've never had anything bad happen to them in their life, such as, having a dictator come in and then start wiping out all of the families and stuff. So, folks, we're getting really close to that, because that part of dependence is leading us into bondage, and it's coming, folks. Bondage is coming. And with that bondage, it's technically being rolled out as technocracy. So, first article, Google, Amazon, and Israel in the new America. America is changing before our eyes, but the Israeli finance ministry apparently hasn't paid it any mind. Last week, the head of procurement at the finance ministry's accountant general's office formally announced that Amazon and Google had won the government tender to provide cloud services to the government as Israel moves forward with its first phase of the Nimbus project. Tender bids submitted by Microsoft and Oracle were rejected. The Nimbus project is a massive multi-year project that will replace the data management infrastructure of government ministries and the IDF. To date, government ministries have used decentralized servers and dozens of independently operated websites to house and manage all their data. The Nimbus product will move all government computing data and applications to commercial clouds provided by technology giants. This is absolutely frightening, folks. When the government computer systems migrate to Google and Amazon's data clouds, these firms will manage all of official Israelis' non-classified data and computerized applications. This will include everything from government and military payrolls to welfare payments to government pensions. It will also include all medical files for every single Israeli. It will include their personal and corporate tax returns. It's possible that from the technical and financial perspectives, the General Accountant's Tender Committee decision to award the cloud contracts to Google and Amazon was reasonable? I don't think so. Two corporations are the industry's leaders in cloud technologies, but even on the technical and financial levels, there are differing opinions about the committee's decision. Oracle's bid was allegedly lower than those submitted by Google and Amazon. Moreover, the tender requires that the cloud be physically located inside of Israel. Oracle and Microsoft have both built cloud centers in Israel. Oracle's is set to open in August, and Microsoft is scheduled to open January 2022. Google and Amazon, for their part, have yet to begin building their data centers, so for the next 2 years, and more likely the next 3 to 4 years, contrary to the stipulations of the tender, Israel's government and IDF data will be housed in Europe. Then there is the issue of redundancy. So not keeping all of your eggs in one basket. This is kind of, I believe, what's going on with Israel, but I think this is really going to bite them in the tush. The trend today among governments and large corporations is to spread their data out among several cloud providers. Israel could have chosen to award the contract to all 4 of the companies and kept costs lower by forcing them to compete over pricing every year. Redundancy in cloud servers also lowers the risk of sabotage and technical failures that can lead to a loss of data or failure of computing systems. At any rate, assuming the tender community followed the best practices for both the financial and technical perspectives in granting the cloud contract to Google and Amazon, the decision is disconcerting all the same. The problem is not financial or technological. The problem is Google and Amazon is cultural. The organizational culture of both corporations raises significant questions about the wisdom of granting them exclusive control over Israel's government data for the next, catch it, 7 years. Ooh, did you get God bumps? Because I know I did. Let me read that to you again. The organizational culture of both corporations raises significant questions about the wisdom of granting them exclusive control over Israel's government's data for the next 7 years. Do we hear Jacob's trouble knocking at the door? During this month's Operation Guardians of the Wall, some 250 Google employees who identified as anti-Zionist Jews wrote a letter to Google CEO Sundar. They began by asking that Google reject the determination that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism and that the company fund Palestinian organizations. The Jewish diaspora in tech called for Google leadership to make a company-wide statement recognizing violence in Palestine and Israel, which must include direct recognition of the harm done to Palestinians by Israeli military and gang violence. That's craziness. They all turned to the Nimbus contract after this. So they're stating that we request a review of all business contracts and corporate donations and the termination of contracts with institutions that support Israeli violations of Palestinian rights, such as the IDF. Okay, so this article gets way better. Shortly after Google's employees published this letter, some 500 Amazon employees entered the anti-Israel fray. They signed a letter that was almost identical to the Google's employees' letter. They called for Amazon to reject the definition of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. They insisted that Israel is a racist colonial project and that the land of Israel belongs to Palestine. They called for Amazon to financially support Palestinian organizations, and they asked for the firm to, quote-unquote, commit to review and sever business contracts and corporate donations with companies, organizations, and or governments that are active or complicit in human rights violations, such as the Israeli Defense Force. So lo and behold, you can read a lot of this article for yourself, but basically the employees at both Amazon and Google are stating that Amazon and Google, they know that they just signed $1 billion deal supporting Israel's military. They are calling out Amazon and that they're complicit in these state killings and human rights abuses. The same nonsense such as BLM and Antifa here in America is now happening to Israel. So if you'll recall, in January, Amazon canceled its cloud services, the contract with the social media platform Parler, which was quote-unquote identified with Republicans. And folks, now the people inside of Amazon are asking them to do the same thing for Israel. So in walks America, and now that we are being divided politically, there are technically 2 Americas, and this is how the world is looking at America right now. So there is, and we know that you can't love one and love the other. You have to serve one. And so one America is traditional, the traditional type of America that loves Israel and America itself. And then there's the other America the new America that hates Israel and doesn't think much of America either. It actually hates it even more. And I don't even know why these people continue to stay here in America. If you don't like it, leave. Okay, go somewhere else that'll make you happy. So traditional Americans believe that the U.S. brought the promise of liberty to the world, and that even though it is far from perfect, this is not God's perfectly set up kingdom yet here on the earth. The U.S. is the greatest country in human history. In the eyes of citizens of traditional America, Israel is a kindred nation and the U.S.'s best friend and most valued ally in the Middle East. This is very, very true. And so here recently, just to prove this about the new America, is we have the Black BLM, Black Lives Matter CEO, basically stepping down and saying that BLM has nothing to do with helping Black people. It doesn't have anything to do with helping people who feel that they have been burdened by slavery and burdened by their chances at a fair life have been taken away. Whatever the course may be, the scorn that these people believe that America is, they're really to the point now where it's becoming so violent, and that it's having such a violent outbreak. A violent spirit is coming out of this new America, where they just want to destroy America. They want to watch it burn, and the same with Israel. So bottom line, if Google and Amazon get control over the state of Israel's computer data, all of this may be gearing up super fast for the 7-year tribulation. Like I said, this is a 7-year contract. Could this be the Antichrist we're seeing right now? Folks, this is so surreal. Please wake up and repent and turn back to Yahweh. Listen to his son. Follow his son. And pick up your cross and follow him. Folks, the only way we're going to get anything good in our lives right now is going to be coming from Yahweh and from his son, Yeshua HaMashiach. The things that these people like Google and Amazon that they're building up to is laughable. And sometimes I find myself laughing at these articles that I'm reading them because they're just so surreal. And it really does seem like they're trying to, it's like the worst salesman ever, trying to sell you a broken vacuum cleaner that doesn't work. And somehow he's talked you into buying it because you think you can get it to work eventually. I don't know. And the same thing is going right now with this technocracy. They're selling this technology to these governments worldwide. And now these people think that, oh, life is going to be so great. Everything will be so easy. Didn't they do the same thing with computers? And it said it would get rid of all of the filing cabinets and all of the paper waste. It actually created more. So here's an article from Natural News to prove my point. HCA Healthcare announces partnership with Dr. Google, exposing 32 million patient records to big tech's prying eyes. A major hospital chain has struck a partnership with Google to upload 32 million private patients' medical records to the Google Cloud. For those of you who are Lord of the Rings fan, you might want to think that maybe Sauron might be rising from the dead again. So these records from the HCA Healthcare based out of Nashville, Tennessee will reportedly be used by Google to create algorithms that instruct doctors and healthcare workers about how to treat their patients. AI is going to tell your doctor how to take care of you. You heard me correctly. Yes, Google is planning to become America's physician. HCA currently operates 186 hospitals and approximately 2,000 healthcare sites across the U.S. The 32 million private patients' medical records it is providing to Google will supposedly be anonymized and stripped of personally identifying information. Artificial intelligence, AI from Google, will then take over and create computer programs that customize care for patients without the need for human input. Machines, in other words, will soon be administering medicine to people who are hooked into the system. This is a ginormous nation-scale database that Google is making right now. The beast is rising, folks. The beast of revelation is rising. So while the medical records are supposed to be protected under federal law, the rules allow for hospitals and other healthcare providers to share patient information with contractors just so long as they abide by the same privacy protections. So 2 questions should be asked about Google's AI abyss, feeding more than 50 billion private medical records into Google's AI abyss. 2 questions should be on your lips and your mind. Did patients know about the transfer of their personal data to the tech giants? And should they be informed and given a chance to opt in or out? So apparently the answer to that first question is a no. They did not get told about this. The answer to the second question became yes. But nobody knew that it was happening, so they missed the deadline to opt out. Oh, this is getting good, folks. This next article is amazing. A lot of people have been picking up on this during the day, and it's been like starting to go viral on Twitter. This is your last chance to opt out of Amazon Sidewalk. Amazon Sidewalk, the company's new shared mesh network that helps devices like Amazon Echo's devices, the Ring and outdoor lights, motion sensors, all kinds of stuff. It even goes through Alexa. So this device is going to be switched on next week, this shared mesh network. Tens of millions of Americans owning Amazon devices, and the experimental network will turn users into guinea pigs next week. This is according to the article from Ars Technica. On June 8th, users who do not opt out will be automatically enrolled in Sidewalk, the mesh network created by Echo's cameras and other smart devices under the Amazon brand. It will use a small amount, supposedly, of your bandwidth and broadcast to nearby neighbors and or city streets. The Amazon website states, Amazon Sidewalk creates a low bandwidth network with the help of Sidewalk bridge devices, including select Echo and Ring devices. These bridge devices share a small portion of your internet bandwidth, which is pulled together to provide these services to you and your neighbors. And when more neighbors participate, the network becomes even stronger, Amazon stated. So some people may not even care about this. Others, they're probably going to want to know how much their network is going to expose possible security flaws. So Ars Technica wrote a cautionary note. There are enough theoretical risks to give users pause. Wireless technologies like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth have a history of being insecure. Remember WEP, the encryption scheme that protected Wi-Fi traffic from being monitored by nearby parties? It was widely used for 4 years before researchers exposed flaws that made decrypting data relatively easy for attackers. WPA, the technology that replaced WEP, is much more robust, but it also had a checkered history. Considering the wealth of intimate details Amazon devices are privy to, they see who knocks on your doors. They listen and record the conversations with your friends and family. They control the locks and other security systems in your home. And extending the reach of all this encrypted data to the sidewalk and living rooms of neighbors requires a level of confidence that's not warranted for a technology that's never seen widespread testing. So there is no doubt there will be some type of benefits to Sidewalk for some, but users will be the guinea pigs, folks. So if you want to opt out of this program, you need to go to Amazon website and I think you sign into Alexa and then you opt out there. There's some ways to do it. You'll have to Google them yourself, but just so you know, heads up. And in other news, Morgan Stanley has stated that everybody's going to see some pain in the next 6 months, and the Great Reset is required. In this article from Zero Hedge, if you want to get to the meat of this article, it's somewhere towards the bottom. In simple words, the MS chief strategist is saying that writing that inflation is now much more the consensus view, quote unquote. In fact, it is so much the case we are starting to think expectations may need to be a bit of a reset before inflation can really embed itself into expectations and force the Fed to move away from its transitory view. So everybody is talking about the rising prices of everything. The corporate and the consumers are now laden with this behavior taking place. So the National Purchasing Manager Survey and the regional Fed surveys are suggesting prices are getting out of control for many businesses. In this regional Fed survey, they picked out some indications of concern, and these were those lists. The pricing of raw material is up more than 20% with no sign of slowing. Material and part supply shortages are our current impediment to increasing revenue. If materials and parts were available, we are still over 200 people short to fill our back orders. Workforce is and will be manufacturing largest hurdles to growth in the U.S. Also, they're feverishly working to pass on increasing prices to reflect those rising material prices. So that's why everything is going up, because everything costs so much more to make nowadays. Inflation is going to be a big factor this year and beyond, they're saying. We are having a really difficult time hiring and keeping quality staff at any wage rate. Everywhere we see help wanted signs, the jobs are going unfilled, exacerbating price increases and shortages. They're also getting a daily price increase from vendors everywhere from 4% to 30%. And their last statement is, we do not believe the supply chain conditions are going away anytime soon. Problems are going to persist into 2022. So inflation expectations have also surged higher from a consumer standpoint, and according to Morgan Stanley, this is the beginning of a new trend that is more sustainable and less transitory than perhaps the Fed thinks. Along with this great reset, I want to remind everybody that even though Klaus Schwab and the WEF are ready to scrap the entire world's economy down the drain, remember we are still looking for the cyber pandemic. We are seeing it right now starting to unfold. We saw it with Colonial Pipeline. Now we've seen it with JBS and the meat processing plants, and now it's affected 3 countries. This cyber pandemic and being held hostage by these crazed Luciferians, they're going to keep pushing this agenda of this cyber pandemic, and then they're going to push that button to reset the whole thing, because it's going to become pandemonium, I do believe. Some people, you guys might want, guys and gals might want to mark this down. July 9th as being the date touted for the possible unveiling of the massive cyber attack that may actually push the button for the reset. All of this is tenable, folks. This is not a prophecy. We watch these things and we listen because that's what we are here to do. Watch and occupy until Yeshua comes. So they may actually go that one step further and take this cyber pandemic to its inevitable outcome and start shutting down power grids across the world, causing havoc that will far exceed the havoc already caused by C-19. So mark your calendars for July 9th. If nothing happens, thank God we have more time to prepare. All right, going to briefly change topics and head to the basically the Middle East and the buildup of Isaiah 17, Psalms 83, and Ezekiel 38 and 39. This one's a big one. Turkey prepares a Syrian diversion for its internal strife. So Turkish operations in northeastern Syria are brewing. If recent developments are an indication, on May 29th, the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army announced that it had eliminated the mastermind behind ISIS assassinations in the region in a joint operation with the Free Syrian Police. The SNA said that the joint force had raided a hideout in the town of Al-Bab where the ISIS assassination commander was taking shelter. There was heavy clashes according to the article. Because of all of the fighting going on in the greater Idlib area, which is northeastern Syria, Ankara fighting against ISIS, also against every Kurdish faction. And this has been going on, really heightening since May 28th into May 30th. With these revelations being made, Turkish leadership is feeling a sense of urgency. There are allegations of high-level phone tapping and illicit weapons and drug trade. And now so much of this is going on that the focus is being shifted to outside of Turkey. And what better way to organize a sort of crisis in the north of Syria, folks? We could be watching Isaiah 17 forming right now, which will kick off Ezekiel 38 and 39, World War III. Erdogan, however you say his name, Turkey is cracking down on all alcohol as Erdogan pushes Islamist agenda. It is getting intense in Turkey, folks. Pray for our brothers and sisters in Turkey. And winding down the news, gonna look at some pretty crazy stuff here. You know, Bible prophecy is getting ready to happen when everything starts to look like Sodom and Gomorrah in the world. So this is coming from UNICEF. Yes, that's right. UNICEF report has said that pornography is not always harmful to children. Not really sure where they're getting this from, but the UN agency is again immersed in a controversy for a recent report suggesting there is no conclusive evidence that children exposed to pornography are harmed. The report published by the UN's Children's Fund, you can see a copy of this link from UNICEF at the c-fam.org in the description box below. They've addressed how government policy can be used to protect children from harmful, abusive, and violent content online. Its conclusion is based on a European study of 19 EU countries that found in most countries, most children who saw pornographic images were neither upset nor happy. In fact, the report from UNICEF relies that 39% of Spanish children were happy after seeing pornography. Porn fighters disagree with UNICEF's data. Quote unquote, UNICEF's report ignores the vast body of research demonstrating that harms of pornography to children. By ignoring the real harms pornography can have, UNICEF is playing roulette with children's health and safety, said Lisa Thompson, Vice President and Director of the Research Institute at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Thompson's organization, which provides expert research to inform policy decisions to end the sexual abuse and exploitation of women and children, has found that pornography can be a central driver of this abuse. Thompson continued, stating, mainstream pornography contains horrific sexual abuse, rape, incest, racism, all of which children should not consume. But UNICEF is saying differently. UNICEF states that any effort to block children from accessing pornographic online might infringe on their human rights. UNICEF bases this claim on an expansive interpretation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. UNICEF also claims that asking for age verification to access the pornography online may deny children access to what it calls vital sexuality education. It should be noted that critics charge comprehensive sexuality education is pornographic and harmful to children. So UNICEF release of this report comes just days after the U.S. Agency for International Development announced its renewal of its long-standing partnership with UNICEF. There's the kicker. Committing an additional $300 million in direct program funding. The U.S. is UNICEF's largest government donor, with 2020 funding researching almost $1 billion, folks. It's $994 million in humanitarian and development programs. And with that said, let's turn to the one world religion that is forming right before our eyes. Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue praises Buddha and calls for a universal solidarity between Catholic Church and all religions. Revelation chapter 13, verses 4 through 6. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. So this is a message from the Roman Catholic Church to Buddhists who are celebrating their feast of Vesca, I guess you call it, which calls for universal solidarity between the Vatican and all the world's religion. So for the most part, the Roman Catholic Church for the past 17 centuries, since their creation in 325 AD, has pretty much taught the one true church, just like it's spelled out in the New Testament, and that the Roman Catholic sacraments offered the only path to salvation. So here in 2021, you've got the false prophet Pope Francis and the Roman Catholic Church embracing the teachings of other religions like Buddhism and calling for the religions of the world to come together in universal solidarity. Welcome to the one world religion of Chrislam. So I'm going to quote Amos chapter 3, verse 3. Can two walk together except they be agreed? You can read the entire letter Miguel Angel Card, the president, sent to the Buddhist for yourself at ussanews.com in the description box below. And this article is just really stating the false sense of the human community and reaffirming that we're all in this together, and this whole oneness. Folks, you can't be one with something that wants you dead. Okay, maybe that's something that floats your boat, but not me, and generally most other people don't want to fit into that category as well. I want you to understand there is a sense of urgency in my voice these days, mainly because I'm behind on all kinds of projects, and I work 8 hours a day and then come home and work another 5 or 6 just to keep the garden getting growing and better. And they're really cool nights, and some of my hotter plants are having difficulties. So I'm really praying and hoping for that bountiful harvest this year, because I think we're going to need it, folks. I think we're all going to need to put away as much food as we possibly can get away with. And this kind of crisis mode, putting all people into this kind of crisis mode for so long, has really caused people to want to look to each other for help and support. Folks, I've learned more than anything out of this last probably year to year and a half that I have to look to only Yahweh and Yeshua and Ruach HaKodesh, and that's it. I follow him and his way, and he has done nothing but do good to me. Over and over again, everywhere I needed something to be, it was already right there, ready for me to use it. And God is so good and wondrous to us. We just have to allow him to work in our lives, and you're just going to see amazing things happen in your life. Please, today, for the love of God, for the love of everyone, turn away from all of these ideas that the world or the nations and the government and these religions are all going to save you. They're not going to save you. Only Jesus Christ, Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, can get you to the Father, and you have to be reconciled with the Son to be reconciled with the Father. So go through Jesus first. We are living in times of judgments, folks. I'm going to step away from the kingdom of God for a little bit to really focus in on people of how important these next few months really are. I mean, watching the world play out, and how this great reset is coming to place, and how all of this is turning people to a one world religion and away from Yahweh, away from his Bible, away from his word. That really angers the Lord. Idolatry is one of the biggest things that the Lord just absolutely hates. He cannot stand it. He wants your love and affection and attention, and he deserves it more than anybody else in the entire creation, because he is not just the Almighty, not just God. He is your best friend, the greatest father that ever has been or ever will be. Folks, there is none better than him. So with that said, please know that these judgments are coming. And these are the things that are coming upon the face of the earth because of what these Luciferian and Satanists are doing in the earth right now. You're witnessing them provoking the Lord to anger, which is going to end up with the vials of his wrath being poured out in the earth, and the greatest of terrible wars and events that will happen to close this age out. And then we'll start the kingdom of Yahweh. So I'm reading from Zephaniah, starting with chapter 1, verse 2. I will utterly sweep away everything off of the surface of the earth, says Yahweh. I will sweep away man and animal. I will sweep away the birds of the sky, the fish of the sea, and the heap of rubble with the wicked. I will cut off man from the surface of the earth, says Yahweh. I will stretch out my hand against Judah and against all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, the name of the idolatrous and pagan priests, those who worship the army of the sky on the housetops, those who worship and swear by Yahweh and also swear by Moloch, those who have turned back from following Yahweh, and those who haven't sought Yahweh nor inquired after him. The day of the Lord, verse 7. Be silent at the presence of the Lord Yahweh, for the day of Yahweh is at hand. For Yahweh has prepared a sacrifice. He has consecrated his guests. It will happen in the day of Yahweh's sacrifice that I will punish the princes, the king's sons, and all those who are clothed with foreign clothing. In that day I will punish all those who leap over the threshold, who fill their master's house with violence and deceit. In that day, says Yahweh, there will be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, a wailing from the second quarter, and a great crashing from the hills. Wail, you inhabitants, the market district, for all the people of Canaan are undone. All those who were loaded with silver are cut off. It will happen at that time that I will search Jerusalem with lamps, and I will punish the men who are settled on their dregs, who say in their heart, Yahweh will not do good, neither will he do evil. Their wealth will become a spoil, and their houses a desolation. Yes, they will build houses, but won't inhabit them. They will plant vineyards, but won't drink their wine. The day of Yahweh is near. It is near and hurries greatly. The voice of the day of Yahweh. The mighty man cries there bitterly. That day is a day of wrath, a day of distress and anguish, a day of trouble and ruin, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness, a day of the trumpet and alarm against the fortified cities and against the high battlements. I will bring distress on men, that they will walk like blind men, because they have sinned against Yahweh, and their blood will be poured out like dust, and their flesh like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold will be able to deliver them in the day of Yahweh's wrath, but the whole land will be devoured by fire of his jealousy, for he will make an end, yes, a terrible end, for all those who dwell in the land. And now, lastly, from 2 Peter chapter 3, starting with verse 3, knowing this first, that in the last days mockers will come walking after their own lusts and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For from the day that the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. For this they willfully forget that they were heavens from old, and an earth formed out of water, and amid water by the word of God, by which means the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. But the heavens that now are, and the earth, by the same word, have been stored up for fire, being reserved against the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. But don't forget this one thing, beloved, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. The Lord is not slow concerning his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient with us, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will be dissolved with fervent heat, and the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be destroyed like this, what kind of people ought you to be in holy living and godliness, looking for and earnestly desiring the coming of the day of God, which will cause the burning heavens to be dissolved, and the elements will melt with fervent heat? but according to his promise, we look for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. Therefore, beloved, seeing that you look for these things, be diligent to be found in peace, without blemish, and blameless in his sight. Regard the patience of our Lord as salvation. Do not be dismayed at the word of the Lord and their heavy words, because he's also given us promises of fruitfulness and joy and abundance and great blessings to come. I want to also mention Isaiah 11, verse 1. A shoot will come out of the stock of Jesse, and the branch out of his roots will bear fruit. This is Jesus, the Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. Verse 2, the Spirit of Yahweh will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yahweh. His delight will be in the fear of Yahweh. He will not judge by the sight of his eyes, neither decide by the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the poor and decide with equity for the humble of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lip he will kill the wicked. Righteousness will be the belt of his waist, and faithfulness the belt of his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the young goat. The calf, the young lion, and the fattened calf together, and the little child will lead them. The cow and the bear will graze, their young ones will lie down together. The lion will eat straw like the ox. The nursing child will play near a cobra's hole, and the weaned child will put his hand on the viper's den. They will not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of Yahweh as the waters cover the sea. It will happen in that day that the nations will seek the root of Jesse, who stands as a banner of the people, and his resting place will be glorious. It will happen in that day that the Lord will set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant that is left of his people from Assyria, Egypt, from Pathros, Cush, Elam, Shinar, and Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. He will set up a banner for the nations, and will assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So please, in closing, don't be dismayed by all the things that are going crazy and haywire these days. Just make sure you're steadfast, focused upon Yahweh and his word, and that you're following Yeshua wherever he may go. You want to be walking right by his side. Folks, I love you all very dearly. I hope this message has blessed you and has given you some knowledge and some wisdom. And I hope to see you again. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Thanks for going to the alternate channel sites and bookmarking those, because you never know, one of these days I may not be able to produce video content on YouTube. So also wanted to tell you some of my plans because of your wonderful donations. I've been saving up money to go the Gab Pro. I've been looking at all kinds of options out there, and I don't feel safe buying any kind of websites and setting up my own domain and all this stuff, because they can just yank you at any time. GoDaddy was one of them I was thinking about doing, but yeah, I've heard some bad stuff about GoDaddy now. So Gab Pro is going to be my next place, and it looks like they're expanding pretty rapidly. I'm going to be uploading all of my video content. I'm going to be doing everything. So the money that you are, sending to me, which is greatly appreciated, is going to be going to fund for that project. And so I'll be able to house all my videos there safely until they actually destroy the internet and everything, which eventually they will do that as well. So folks, we just got to last out a little bit longer, occupy just a little bit longer until he comes. And then once the rapture, that trumpet is blown and we are all sitting with him in heaven and enjoying the marriage of the Lamb. Folks, I hope you're preparing your hearts and your minds and your souls and your spirits, because it's going to happen one day. Poof! The rapture is going to take place. Jacob's trouble is going to commence. World War III will commence. Folks, things are in action now. And is it any wonder that all this evil is now stirred up in the world because God the Father's closing out all of his arrangements? Everything is almost done in heaven to receive his people in heaven, folks. Just think of how cool it's going to be. Praise Yahweh, praise Yeshua, and thank you, Ruach HaKodesh, for bringing us all this information and bringing us together at a time such as this. I love you all. Maranatha. Keep looking up, everyone. Our redemption draweth nigh.